DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. Let's talk about the death of the sad, tragic death of journalism. Now, let's be clear what journalism is supposed to be. Journalism is defined as, y'all can look at the definition yourselves, but the definition of journalism is, I'm paraphrasing here, is people whose very job is to give an objective reporting to the people. So it's people whose job is to give an objective reporting to the citizens, people like you and I who are not, on what's happening. That's basically what journalism is. And the actual initial creation of the press was stated in the way back in the day. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson, but it might have been somebody else. Don't quote me on who said it. But a group of people whose very job is to report what the government is doing, and the purpose of the press was to keep the government honest, because the government knew that since they have these people whose job it is to report everything that they're doing, all the details, everything, the good and the bad of what they do, the government understood that, all right, if we do something shady or we do something we're not supposed to do, that they're going to go report it and they're going to tell everybody. So we better be careful and make sure that we do the right thing, because if we don't, it's going to get reported, and then the people who voted for us, our bosses, the public, they're going to vote us out because they know about the bad stuff we've been doing because the press told them. That was what the press was originally created to do. That was their original purpose. And the reason why I titled this The Death of Journalism is because they no longer do that. The press doesn't do that anymore. Now the press has pretty much been bought. The press makes their decisions as to what to report and how to report about it based on their affiliation. In other words, based on who they like, who they don't like, what side they're on, what side they're not on. The problem is the press is not supposed to have a side. The press is supposed to be on the side. Actually, they are supposed to have a side. The side is supposed to be objective truth. That's their side. They're on the side of, we're going to tell you objectively the truth of everything that happened, no matter what it is. If that truth happens to be ugly, if that truth is nasty, if that truth makes somebody that's trying to look good, but the truth actually makes them look bad, if the truth exposes them for doing something they're not supposed to be doing, that's what the truth does. That's what the truth is about, right? The truth sometimes is ugly. Can we agree? The truth is sometimes cold. The truth is sometimes harsh. The truth sometimes will make people uncomfortable. That's the very purpose of the truth, is we're going to tell you what it is, even if that makes you uncomfortable, because you need to know what it is. The reason why journalism has died is because nowadays the press, the media, these companies who are supposedly, allegedly giving us objective truth, they don't do that anymore. And I think we can all agree to that, no matter what side of the political, social conversation you happen to be on. Because nowadays you get, and let's look at a publication that people know. Let's say something like the New York Times. The New York Times is reporting a story about a certain topic. How are they going to slant it? We already know. We know that if that story happens to be pro anything that's on the liberal/progressive side of things, and again, this is not my opinion, this is my observation. Anybody who objects to this, you can let me know in the comments. Anything on the liberal/progressive side of things, or the Democrat side of things, we can put them all in one box for the purpose of this conversation. The New York Times is going to make it sound like it's good, and righteous. They're going to put a positive spin on that reporting. Now, if it's something on the conservative, Republican, what's another word for it? Let's just say that. Conservative, Republican side of things, they're going to put a spin on it that makes it look and sound bad. We saw this that get exacerbated through the presidency of Donald Trump. Anything Donald Trump did and anything New York Times reported regarding Donald Trump, and I follow the New York Times on social media because I like their writing and their stories when they talk about anything other than politics and government. Even when they write about politics and government, it's informing me on what I'm telling you here, but I didn't like it because I knew that they were always so heavily slanted one way or another. They weren't giving me objective information, so I couldn't really learn from them because they're always trying to make it sound better or worse than it actually was. But the other stuff I like. But anything involving Trump, they try to make it look bad. And anything involving, let's just say now, Biden or the left, or anything that's the BLM, progressive, all of that stuff under one umbrella, they try to make it sound good. We all can agree to this, even if you like the New York Times, even if you work for the New York Times, you can agree that all of this is true. All right. If anyone, again, objects to anything that I'm saying here, or at least that I've said so far, you can let me know and explain to me why. Now, I don't think anybody can object to this. The problem with that is as citizens, our expectation, the original expectation, was that they were going to give us just objective truth no matter what it was. And this is why journalism is such a challenging job, and why people aren't really doing it anymore. And this is why I say it's dying, is because a journalist's job is to tell us objectively what's going on, even if telling us objectively what's going on makes the person that they voted for look bad. Even if it means the party that you grew up supporting, now you have to kind of say something negative about them because what they did was a negative thing. And the truth that you're sharing just happens to make them look bad because, hey, that's what they did. You didn't do it, they did it. And your job is to report that. And I had an exchange with somebody on Twitter today, not the day that you're watching this, but the day that I'm recording it. And this gentleman was talking about how in the NBA, Draymond Green was talking about how it's not his business. Draymond said this. It's not his business to get on Andrew Wiggins about getting the vaccination or not getting the vaccination. Maybe his status has changed by the time you see this video. And this guy, he's a black guy, at least from his avatar. He was writing an article, I believe it's for the USA Today. He was saying, well, he wrote a little brief article. It wasn't even that many words, and there was really no substance to it. He's just a token guy writing it. It wasn't even an article. This is like a blog post. It was the quality of it. And he was just saying, well, it's wrong. It's not a personal issue for somebody to get vaccinated. X number of people have died. It's a public health issue. You're protecting other people's health. You're keeping other people from dying by getting the vaccination. That was his point in this 200-word article that he wrote. And I wrote back to him. It was like a back and forth exchange of like 2 tweets. And I said to him, I asked him the following question, which he did not answer, and it makes sense when I tell you the question why he didn't answer. I said to him, let's just say, because he's a journalist, allegedly a journalist, he wrote an opinion piece about the vaccine and why he disagreed with Draymond Green, and LeBron James agreed with Draymond Green, and how he disagreed with both LeBron and Draymond. I asked him the following question. I said, what if your opinion was you agreed with Draymond and LeBron? You thought it was a good idea that Draymond and LeBron were saying it's not our business to say who should get a vaccine and who's not. What if that was your actual opinion? This is what I'm asking this writer. That wasn't his opinion. I said, what if that was your opinion? Would your employer, the USA Today, who he wrote that article for, would they publish that article if you had the exact opposite opinion? And then I asked him also, if you shared that exact opposite opinion, would the USA Today ever commission you to write another article for them? And he didn't have an answer to the question because he knows the answer is absolutely not. They would not run that article, number one. Number two, they would never ask him to write another article for them. There he would lose his income. This is all the hustle that I'm talking about here. And I followed it up by telling him what I'm telling you. I said it in much fewer words. I said, if the answer is no to both of those, which I'm going to assume that it is because he didn't respond, he wasn't in a position to debate, because you can't debate something if you've already decided on your stance and you're not willing to change it no matter what you hear. All right, you can't. How are you going to debate something at that point? Actually, you can debate it. Let me back up. You can debate it, but you're not looking at things objectively. You have already decided what your belief is. Therefore, you're not going to go back and forth, and you're not even willing to change your opinion no matter what you hear from anybody else. So how is it really a debate? It's not really a debate. At that point, it's kind of like an argument. An argument is like, I'm strong on this side, you're strong on this, and we're just going to butt heads, and we know we're not changing each other's mind. We're just doing this for I guess for exercise, I guess we'll call it, for lack of a better term. Debate, I believe a debate is when two people, they come with their opinions, but they're both willing to change their opinion if you could give me the right piece of information, or you could share something with me that maybe I hadn't looked at a certain way. That's the difference I see between a debate and argument. I'm willing to change my opinion if you can give me some information. Now, I'm going to give you what I got. If you got something better, tell me what it is, and let's see. Maybe I'll change my opinion. My opinions are all flexible. But I believe that a lot of these journalists, again, a journalist's job is to be as objective as possible. A journalist is supposed to be naturally skeptical. That's what a journalist is supposed to be. It's supposed to be skeptical. That means anything they hear, anything that they're told, their natural response is to be skeptical of it. As like, I'm dubious of what they just said. Let me find out if that's true. Let me dig into what you just told me and decide if this is accurate or if it's not. That's a journalist's job. They are supposed to do that. They do that work, and then they come back to us and tell us through their skepticism what they actually found out. That's what a journalist is supposed to do. Now, some of you, depending on your age, you may have no recollection of this ever happening. This used to happen back in the day, way before the internet took over everything. This used to happen. A journalist would get information and say, I'm dubious of this information. Let me go dig into it. Let me tell you what I actually found out. Nowadays, a journalist decides what their belief's going to be, and then they report it to you as if they already figured it out, but they didn't do any digging, and then they get mad at you if you don't agree with them. That's the exact opposite of what a journalist is supposed to do. That's what some dude standing on the corner with a 40-ounce malt liquor is supposed to do. That's not what a journalist is supposed to do. And this is why journalism is dying, is because journalists are not actually doing the job of digging into information. What they're doing is basically propagandizing. They're being told what to believe. They accept what they are told, and then they go out and they basically, what's the word I'm looking for? They like evangelize for that idea. Everything that they write is just evangelizing for what they already agree with. So here's the thing with journalists. Most journalists these days, and I'm using the term loosely when I say journalists. I didn't use air quotes every time, but I should. Most journalists these days, you already know exactly what angle they're going to take every time you read something that they write. With many journalists these days, and some of them may be watching this video, when they put something out, you already know what angle they're going to have before you even read what they wrote. And if you can predict what angle a journalist is going to take, they're not actually a journalist. A true journalist should surprise you with their position, because they're digging into the truth of things, and the truth is not predictable. All right, the truth changes based on what's going on. So if a certain journalist, every time they write about politics, they make the right look bad and the left look good, they're not actually a journalist, because sometimes the left does something stupid and the right does something great. But if a journalist only goes on this way for this side and this way for that side, they're not actually a journalist. True journalism will give you the objective truth. And again, the objective truth can go any direction. Doesn't matter where it goes, who feels good about it, who feels bad about it, who it offends, who it attacks. Actual journalism is objective, and it sees things as they are, and it reports things as they are. How many journalists do you know? How many publications do you know of that actually do this these days? There are very, very few. And the few that are doing this, they're all rushing to pick sides, because they're trying to cater to a certain audience so they can keep their bills paid. And this is why I told you in episode 1474 of my podcast, stop watching the news, because it used to be the news. It's not the news anymore, because of the way that everybody's trying to slant and try to draw an audience instead of actually giving people objective truth. Because objectivity is basically the new controversy these days. If you try to be objective, you're controversial, because you're not going hard for one side or another side, and people get mad at you because you won't stay on the same side of an argument. That's not how life works. All right, life doesn't stay the exact same way every time. So I'll be getting night and day. So I'll be getting summertime and wintertime. Things change. But anyone who's willing to do that, now you become controversial. Now you can't be on either team because they don't like you, because you won't go with them all the time. And this is why journalism is dying. So y'all tell me what y'all think about this. Any of you who does a lot of reading, which I do, any of you who does any writing, any of you who talks about these issues and you try to be objective. Again, no human being can be completely objective. We all have biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious, but at least you try, and you're willing to say, look, you could even say something like, look, I'm Democrat, but I don't like what the Democrats are doing right now. Or I'm Republican, but I disagree with this Republican person. An objective person can do that. But these days, nobody does that. Everybody's trying to pick a side, and no matter what happens, they try to paint it to be one way or another. But again, this is why journalism is dying, because journalists were supposed to help us think this way. They don't do that. They've completely abandoned that pursuit so that they can just keep getting their checks. And most of these cats are not even journalists. They're actually bloggers with journalism in their bios, but they're not actually journalists. All that said, I got a text line where I send out a daily motivation text every day. It's not about this stuff. Might be, but it is every day. You can send me a text at the following number, 305-384-6894. You get my daily motivation every day. And if you want to come to my live event where I'm talking about leadership on day 1, communication on day 2, is Work on Your Game Live. It's down here in beautiful South Florida, Miami, January 21st and 22nd. Go to workonyourgame.live. The website and the link and the number to that text number I just gave you, both of those are down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre all day.